in. So in today's session, as I mentioned, we are going to talk about getting smart with data ingestion. So let me tell you a little background over the reason behind we put together this story here. So we all use Sentinel, and we know that this is a well-known SIEM and it is getting high value in market as well these days. Um, and there's a recent change in name as well. It is from Azure Sentinel, it is renamed to Microsoft Sentinel right now. And Microsoft has various offerings, to make sure that, and as an end user or as a security analyst, right, we get enough resources and enough freedom to do a POC and plan this SIEM on a cloud solution itself. So there is no much of hurdle, but implementation and testing is one thing. There's another thing is around the planning. How do you want to run this SIEM in long run? And that's where today's session was planned, and that's where I would like to start today. So I would request you a minute to share my screen, and then so just I'm trying to share my screen, and if you could confirm it is visible to you.
No, not yet.
Okay, I think there's something. Just give me one quick second. And you should be able to see it now.
Yeah, it's loading. Please wait. Yeah, we are able to see. We can see the slide.
Thanks again for joining in. And as I said, the session is named after getting smart with data ingestion, because the more we calculate our data ingestion, the more the solution becomes robust and cost effective in the long run. And that's the whole purpose of it. So as Periman mentioned, I work as a lead developer in Open Systems, which is again cloud security focused company. So with that, let me go to my first slide. So today we're going to talk about only three things, and then we'll open it up for Q&A and we'll see what next. So first thing, as we have started the conversation, we need to understand that why cost is so important to us. And specifically, when you talk about organization budgets in terms of security, right, how meaningful it is. And then we will also understand how with little tweaks around the things help us reduce the cost, right, a lot. And also we will try to go through the things what is already available as a part of free, so that will also help us to plan. Actually, for example, we are estimating x amount of data or x amount of x volume of logs to ingest to Sentinel, but if we just put through the real time chart, that sometime might vary with some ups and downs with delta percentage. So the purpose of this session is to give you an overview so that you can actually budget your Sentinel with more accuracy. And also, in case you're running a SIEM as a Sentinel, right, this is also helpful. We will also try to go through some existing budgets and see how do we leverage this budgeting piece to fine tune our Sentinel cost. And then you also need to understand the retention costs more, because we most of the time always focus on what data is getting ingested, and keep aside the fact that in Azure, more than ingestion, data consumption or data retention always cost more, and which is not very well planned, and that ends up in a huge bill and the other implications. And then after discussing these two problems, we will try to get to an efficiency path, right, and then see how that efficiency path can help us getting a better costing model around Sentinel, and also how we can operationalize the efficiency path to make sure day by day we can go through the things and fine tune what's not needed. And then it'll be Q&A, and we'll see what next can be done. So with that, I will just move on to my next slide. So I have just put together a three layer execution path, which we say we first ask questions in case we are having, like having to start with something new. So in this case, the question here is the environment new? That means, are we going to leverage Sentinel as a SIEM for the first time, or we are already leveraging it in our organization? So if the answer is yes, right? So if it is already, it is not a new environment, and then we are already leveraging something, so first thing we will do is, mm, go to the billing center and then check what exactly the cost of Sentinel and how much it is costing around all the resources. And throughout this process, we will also talk about what are the things we need to consider when you talk about Sentinel cost. It's not only the log analytics and Sentinel, it's way more than that when you talk about the budget and Sentinel cost, right? So that's something. And then after analyzing the cost, and also in this process, we will try to understand what is the best way, to get the granularity in terms of costing. That will help us, if you have cost, if you have, let's say, $1,000 build on last 15 days, we will be able to exactly break down what was that $1,000 was meant for. And we keep checking on that. And in the operational model, we will also check, like for example, we have log analytics workspace, or we have onboarding or already onboarded Sentinel, we want to continue. So again, in that also, by seeing the cost, we need to analyze that what are the data we want to keep it, because as I mentioned, data ingestion is one thing, and also the fact that data retention cost a lot, so we need to keep an eye on that. That will help us on the budgeting piece of it. So, and just in the other case, in the decision tree, so if we are starting something new, we gonna search the billing calculator present for Azure Sentinel, and then get started from there. And then once we start and deploy Sentinel, maybe over the time after the free period is over, we'll go to cost calculator and keep checking the same metrics. So this is a small analogy I put together, so that we can understand that, what exactly the flow and how we should be able to optimize the cost. It is not a one time thing, it has to gradually grow over time. And then optimization is something, at its best when you keep it going. So with that, let me go to the next one. So when you talk about, is it a new environment, right? So whenever we talk about this being a new environment, I'll take a case of this being a new environment. So if it's a new environment, there are a couple of offerings, as I said, Microsoft has, right? So Microsoft has, wherein you can actually get a free trial, and you can try Sentinel out for 31 days. And in that, what happens is, you get to do things, at actually no cost. So there are limitations to that as well, which we'll talk in a while. But there is a free trial offering, and that's basically done by Microsoft to make Sentinel adoptable in an easier and a better way. And alongside, not only free trial, you still have some free data sources, ingested into Sentinel. So when you go through the Sentinel console, we will quickly see that not all the data we pull into Sentinel costs. So the next best thing would be, like, to check, right, whatever the data sources are free, how do we leverage them for our SIEM purpose, like how helpful they are, and how helpful they are to our organization specifically. And there's a third layer of free stuff, that is, even if you ingest your custom data, right, you don't ingest, don't need to pay every bits of data or every bits of information Sentinel ingests. So you ingest your data, and on top of it, there are certain default column, for example, resource ID, tenant ID, and stuff like that. And that is something, done by Sentinel internally to make sure that your data is properly organized. And obviously you don't need to pay anything for those. So basically there are three layers, if you are going to a new environment, right? You can set up a free trial and understand, what going on, and how much data you need. So that's the first place if you're having a new environment, right? Second thing is, within that, after your free trial period being passed, which is 31 days, as Microsoft says, so you still have certain data for free ingestion, so you never need to pay for it. And the third part is, even you ingest something additional for example, custom, you still have something free out of it. So with this, let me quickly try to jump into Azure Portal and show you, how we basically run Sentinel and then when you do a setup. So if I look at my screen, right, I'm logged into Azure Portal and I'm going to Sentinel, and this I have basically done a bit while ago, so you might not see the free stuff, but let me try to explain it. So what happens is if I just go to settings and as you said, so let me go to workspace settings and also in this usage and billing. So you see 31 days, right? So 31 days, and let me go to daily cap and okay, so let me come back here. So just to give you a better understanding, let me go back again. And this is what we look like when we basically provision a Sentinel workspace, right? You get an overview, you get logs, you get all incident management, you get workbooks, and you get hunting. And in workbook, you get to see stuff. Workbook is like a visual of your query. And if I may go to workbook and search for usage, there is a specific workbook, and then let me click on. So first thing, as I said, I will set the workspace here and then I'll go for here. And if I look at this, right, so there is a column called is billable, as I was talking in the second point, and you can see, right, there are tables like heartbeat. Heartbeat is a table when you configure MMA agent to talk to log analytics workspace, and then that data is totally free to ingest. So you don't need to pay anything for that. There is security alerts. So any alerting happens, like Sentinel does it analysis and creates alerts and incidents for that matter, so that your SIEM becomes operational. So you don't need to pay anything for these. Now this again, another one is for operation. So what I have done for the ease of ours, I have just put together, based on Microsoft documentation, I put together a small empty page in my GitHub. So let me try to ping you this real time so that you can also see it for yourself. And I'll just ping it here and go back to that. And if I just go there, right, and let me go to the section where it says free trial. So there are caveats, as I mentioned. So whenever you are in free trial, right, you have a new log analytics workspace, you can go up to 10 GB per day, which is free, and for 31 days at no cost. Now again, after 30 days you have to pay for it. And there's one more caveat, again, as I said, the free data sources. So there's a table put together for each connector, which I'll show in the portal in a short while. So Azure Activity is one of the tables which is fully free. So you don't need to pay anything additional for pushing Azure Activity logs to Sentinel. Same thing goes for security alerts. Same thing goes for Office Activity. So similar to this. Same thing goes for security alert incident, security alert MDATB. So if I may quickly jump into, let me quickly try to get this in here. So if I may quickly jump into here, and then if I go back, so as I was talking about, whenever, let's say, we enable Sentinel for free, and then when I go to data connector, so and if I search for Azure in the data connector, which might not have connected, but if we look at Azure Activity, right, I'm not connected because it's like a deb instance, so you don't have user much. But if I just try to open this page, right, this data set basically gets all your Azure Activity and puts into Sentinel workspace, and you get to have queries to that, and you have to have analytic rules set on that, and it's all free. It's no cost to ingest, right? So similar to this, we have another columns, right? If I just go to Office, it'll show me Office Activity, and then Office Activity have, again, and this is a Azure tenant, so we don't have Office Activity here. But SharePoint, it pulls out logs basically from three log sources. What is SharePoint? One is Exchange, one is Teams. So all three ingestion is basically free. and you don't have to pay anything. So whenever you're planning, right, whenever you're planning for your Sentinel deployment, so one of the smart thing you can do is just rule out all these data connectors and all these data sources which is free for you, and then put together in Sentinel at no cost. All right. So coming back to the previous one, and also there are connectors. If I just go to MCAS, I'm not sure. Yeah, there's a recent rename, so I will quickly try to go to Defender. So there are system, right? For example, Azure Defender for identity protection, and then we have Microsoft Defender for that matter. So all those alerts are for. Let me go back to, yeah. So let me, yeah. This is the log section. So basically, if we look at the data type, it goes and sits in the security alert. So if I may go back to the document again, so anything get ingested to the security alert, right? It's all free. That's one of the things I would say. If you have to plan, please plan it out accordingly, so that you don't need to plan, for example, everything you ingest. So there are, and but again, there are little tweaks here. For example, if I just go to Defender, right, and there's a connector for Defender for Office 365, and if we look at the connector on the right hand side, I'll let it load. And oh, my bad, I selected the wrong connector. So I would say Defender for Office 365. And if we look at this, right, this is going to pull data from security incident, security alert, and device details and email details, right? So within this, as long as we need the data for security incident and alerts, we are free to ingest. But the moment we switch on data for device tables, for example, device events, device file events, or any email events like from Office 365. So that's going to charge us as per Sentinel standard charges. So that's where your free stuff ends, and that's where you get to start paying for it. So with that said, I'd say now the next thing is, whenever the free stuff is over, right? And also there are cases, as I if I may go to this log analytics workspace, and let me try to search. So I'll try to search sign in log CL. So just a table here. And oh, my bad. So I will go back for 7 days and run this again. And in here, if you see, there are a couple of tables. For example, if I may go to resource, or better, I think if I may go to, there'd be a column called type. Yeah. So this is basically Sentinel internally does, so that it can keep your data separate. So whatever data you accumulate in this column, for example, right, throughout, that doesn't have any charges for you. So it's all free. And there's a little query, actually, if I just run this, and I have already shared that in the GitHub page. And it basically talks about a couple of things. What is your highest paid logs? So my being a small environment, I have like TI feed enabled. So that table size is this, and then that's billable. So this query gonna tell you whatever data you're ingesting for last 30 days, what is billable out of it and what is non-billable out of this. So if you see, there are security alerts, security incident usage, all those, even audit logs, sorry, even security incident, all those stuff are basically false. So just to summarize on a free stuff, so you have three layers basically, right? There's a free trial tier which will let you deploy Sentinel for 31 days, and then you can have actually data cabinet of 10 gigs per day ingested to log analytics. And you can have this kind of trial only set up 20 times per directory. It cannot be more than that. So that's a limitation, but that's, I think, it's a very very big scope for anyone to go ahead and then do some POCs over Sentinel. Now, once you turn on the POC, you can still see some free stuff, right? So and there are additional cases. For example, if you're ingesting type data and stuff like that. So it's it doesn't cost you anything. So mostly to get started to Sentinel, you don't need any much thing to pay. But that's where we just get overwhelmed and we start turning on everything, and then we have to pay more throughout our time. Because as I said, I'll just quickly jump back to my first slide and then say that you ingest data, which is fine, but after 30 days, log analytics has a Sentinel has a max caveat of keeping your data for 2 years. So though you basically ingest data for free, and Microsoft also gives you another privilege of returning, you can return your logs for 3 months for free. But beyond that, they're going to charge you. And that's where it comes in. So for example, in POCs, you have done a lot of data ingestion, assume that this is free, and then this is gonna not cost me much. But though the ingestion is free, but the retention is not. So retention has its own cost, and then going forward, that cost will spike up based on the data volume you grow. For example, you are ingesting 10 gigs a day, right? After 30 days, after 10 days, like, you have 100 gigs. After 30 days, you have 300 gigs. So after 90 days, you have 310 days per day ingestion. So it's like 310, 320. That's how the ingestion costs, retention cost increases over the time. So that's why we should consider the retention cost as well. Now, assuming that you have actually done some Sentinel deployment and you have a good environment sitting in, now you want to see, you have bills and you want to see exactly what is costing you. So for that, basically what I need to do is we need to go to cost management and then possibly filter out the particular subscription you want to have it, and then try to group it by meter and then do a daily granularity filter. So with that, what you can see is what was the cost of your data ingestion and what was the cost of your data analysis. So this basically triggers to another point, that what's the difference between ingestion and analysis. So if I may go to the readme file and then show you what exactly are the parameters Sentinel takes into account. So if I may go to Azure cost, let me quickly search for it, Azure Sentinel cost calculator. And then if I go here and let me keep scrolling down, hope I'm not okay. This is not the right pricing calculator. Let me see. Okay, see the link here, understand the change of pricing tier. So that's one thing, as I said, you need to consider the cut retention. But now when you plan for your Sentinel ingestion, right? So if I may just scroll down, right? So I'll just put to no put a highlight on that. For example, you have 145 gigs of data ingestion every day, so you're going to pay for that. And what happens, when you enable Azure Sentinel, right? Azure Sentinel has its own cost of analyzing the data, so that's additional. So when you say free, right? So only this ingestion freeze is free. You always pay for this, apart from 31 days of POC, and also you're going to pay for the retention. So this is all about the cost, and that's why the cost spikes up. And this is where we should get smarter. So when you plan for data ingestion, right? So maybe let me see that. Let's say, for example, if I may change it. So this calculator is little different. So the cost would be like, there has to be a change in the cost. So the cost would be like, in your ingestion cost may be 10 GB, right? Because you have office activity and all other stuff free, but still Sentinel need to analyze whatever data you ingested, even they are in free stuff. So you pay for it. But there is a little difference, and when you try to see the bill at the end of your month, right, you might not be able to match with this calculator. So this is a very very basic place to start with, and beginning, but we should always rely on our cost calculator and see which has cost what, and accordingly we take our decisions. So that's about how we plan for it. And also, right, whenever we plan to cost, we need to consider three things. One, what I ingest in log analytics, what analysis happens by Microsoft Sentinel, and what's the cost of your retention. That's only for Sentinel, right? But if I may go back to costing, as I said, this is exactly a fit with the billing calculator. But if I may go to the cost calculator, right, you can still see I have static IPs and I have vCPUs. So there are stuff like which doesn't directly relate to Sentinel, but still we have to have them. And what is the reason for that? So let us go to the wiki and then, let me see. Yep. So what happens is whenever we budget for Sentinel or plan for Sentinel, right? Sentinel is only for data analytics. So if you want to, utilize your full potential of Sentinel, you have to have some logic apps for automation or function app for automation, or maybe some other syslog servers which will pull out your syslog data, or maybe some other safe data sources. So all those things are a part of Sentinel billing, right? So logically, if you are migrating from one of the existing, SIEM solution to new SIEM solution, you do not only need to make sure that the ingestion cost is fine, but you also need to, take care of whatever remediation, whatever additional things you're running, within Sentinel, right? So that's where you need to always measure the additional pricing for all of the resources, and that's where cost calculator is very handy. So for example, if you have a logic app running, right? So let me quickly go back to the logic app documentation, and it says logic app has a very small billing prices. So it has a cost for per action per connector. So again, this might seem very simple, but what happens through the time, right? So let me see if I can have some logic apps over here. Oh, let me see if I can just see, and as no run, I should be able to this. Let me see. Okay, let me run it for example. I know it's gonna fail, but yeah, let me run this. Okay. So what has happened, right? If we run it, right? So if I go through, this is a very simple logic app which is going to block a user. So now you see, right? Everything I run that becomes a part of run history, and run history not only stores the execution, it actually holds the entire data of that logic app being executed, which is also partially built, right? Somehow built to your subscription. So all those things, right, will only come into the cost calculator once you have, exhausted your free tier. So it's always a good idea to build stuff and then see where we can optimize, and take it a little bit slower, right? So that's one thing about, how do we basically plan out things. So just to summarize on that part, when we plan for, let's say we have an existing SIEM and then we see a lot of billing, or we are monitoring the billing solution, so we need to also factor in all other places where the Sentinel is being used, or whatever is used to interact to Sentinel. All those things comes under part of the billing, and then that's part of your billing. So the more you analyze, the more you optimize, the best result you get. So that's around planning Sentinel with all other additional components, right? Now, as I mentioned, for example, everything has its own pricing. Like if we talk about Sentinel, Sentinel goes to log analytics, and then there's analysis cost of Sentinel, and then you pay for additional resources for that matter. So now, and also you pay for retention. That's how the thing is. So that's about, optimizing billing at a overall level. But let's say if we want to do it at a very deeper level. So for example, we are ingesting data with some ceph format from your maybe some Cisco appliances or any other appliances which supports syslog or ceph forwarders. So in ceph, what happens if we look at a standard ceph format comes with some additional fields. Or maybe, for example, if you want to ingest zscaler web or ZPA data to Sentinel, so that comes with ceph. When you configure ceph, right, in your sender, you get to configure what are the additional data sources you want to, and you have to be very careful choosing those. Reason is, for example, if you are putting two additional parameter compared to you're putting five additional parameters, so those three parameters can, based on your log volume ingestion, those three parameters can go high, and then that can cost a little bit extra, and then that will also will be, you know um, also will be extended with your retention data or retention cost. So So that's about ingestion. Now that's about ingestion we have talked about. And the next thing we can do is, when we have the bill, right? So when we have the bill, and then if I just look at it, and then if I see data ingestion, and then again, if we go back to Sentinel, for example, and in a Sentinel, you know, let me go to, okay, I think Sentinel, go to settings, and in settings, right? So after you have exhausted your free days, after you have exhausted, let me, after you have, like, crossed your 1 or 2 billing cycles, so now you have a better understanding of your data, like, for example, how many data, maybe at cases, if you are running on-prem sim or a parallel sim product, you might already have that estimate. So if you already have that estimate, right, even in ingestion cost, right, so you can actually go with some commitment tiers. So these are the tires, and then based on whatever tire you choose, right, the billing will be happening on that. So what will happen, for example, so let's say you have 550 GB of data ingestion per day. So the ideal way would be, you can apply this billing cycle, or 500 GB per day quota, which you will get at a 60% discount rate, and then the 50 GB data will be calculated on pay per GB basis. So it's like a total saving for you. But again, the catch here is, the moment you expand, right, or increase, so there is actually, you can go from 500 GB, you can always go to 1 TB, but there's no backward compatibility as Sentinel provides as of today. So it's always a good idea to estimate, maybe 3 months, 5 months, 6 months data, and then define this tier, until unless you already know what's exactly the data volume is. And same settings is also available if I may go to log analytics. And so if I go to usage and estimated costs, and the daily cap, you can put a daily cap here as well, right? And you can actually retain the data till 2 years, as you see, 730 days, right, which I'm not going to do right now in this subscription. And this also has its billing commitment TS for that matter. And if I go to usage details, it's going to take us to link. So now for example, right now you have deployed, and you are a customer that is getting used to Sentinel, but still you want to have some more visibility for that. So there are as I said, there are resources Microsoft provided, which you can use out of the box. So if I may go to workbook section, and usage, right, and then click on view saved workbook. So this is basically, and I have to really quickly click some parameters and make some filters, and you can see your performance of your Sentinel over time. This doesn't give you any billing information, but this will give you a good idea around what's going on, what's going on with your workspace, and then what are the intelligent packs, to add on to. So that's pretty much it. And I would like to have this session open for Q&A now, and maybe we'll end up with a bonus tip on one more optimization. So please, if you have any questions.
Hi,
Guys,
Samik.
yeah, please unmute and ask your.
Sure,
Please feel free to ask your questions. Thank you.
sure. Samik, Jawad here.
Hey, Jawad.
Yeah. So I have a small doubt. Like when you say that Sentinel is having a free tier and all, is
Mhm.
that Azure Monitor also having a free tier, or we might need to pay for that Azure Monitor
Okay, so that's a
or that
very good
log
question.
analytics?
That's a very good question. So let me tell you in this. If you see, right, pay as you use a default model, and actually data retention, your data volume measured in GBs, and then let me see. Yeah, free trial. New Logarithmics workspace can ingest up to 10 GB per day for first 30 days for no cost. So I think this is what you are looking for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as long as it is under the hood of 10 GB, you can you can play around with the data.
Okay. Okay. So in that analysis, like if you are creating rules in the log analytics, how it is
Mhm.
gonna bill? Like, is it per rules that we are creating, or is it per rules which are triggering?
Nope, nope. There is, so that's a good thing about Sentinel. You can actually, create n number of rules, and that will create n number of incidents, right? And what happens if I look at, and then if we go to the workspace, right? So security alert and security incident is where the rules are getting created, right? And both are non-billable. So because you are paying
Okay.
Sentinel for the analysis data, right? So these two are free. So
Okay.
Sentinel does it for you. Even whatever Sentinel has, and Sentinel has this multi-stage attack detection and stuff like that. That's one thing. And I'd like to add one more point here. So for example, right, when you talk about billing and stuff like that, so let's say this is my table, and this is costing really huge. So I can specifically set a retention for this table, and there are provision for that as well, not only at a workspace level.
Okay. Okay. So on a table level also, we can like keep something for 3 months and something for 2 months like that.
Let me see. Bill.
Okay.
So let me share the link as well. So these are recent releases. Let me paste that if this helps. Right. Any other questions?
Yes, Amik, this is Parmal here.
Hey, Pramod.
Uh, yeah, actually, I'm not an Azure guy, but I
Yep.
am planning to use this Azure Sentinel for my Microsoft 365 tenant.
Okay.
So, in pricing perspective,
Mm-hmm.
so after 31 days, I need to pay for the Azure Log Analytics, and then for Azure Sentinel, there won't be any pricing, right? If I am using only Office 365 connector alone.
So it's just the other way. So if you're using some free tier, right, that the ingestion is free. So it's just the other way. You pay for Sentinel analysis, you don't pay for anything on log ingestion.
Okay. So after 31 days, for analysis part, I need to pay.
Yeah.
Okay. So for that, as you have suggested, I need to go to the pricing calculator to see how it comes.
Yes, yes. And by 30 days, I think you will get a good granularity of what exactly your data volume is of your 365 tenant.
Okay.
But
Okay.
again, even just a little bit of details around that. So when you were talking about Office 365 ingestion, right?
Hmm.
So if I just search for Office, and if you see, right, if you are trying to refer the free logs of Office, sorry, the raw logs of Office 365, yeah, for
Hmm.
that you need to pay and stuff like that. But if you are, let's say, you have another product like Defender for Endpoint or MD or something like that, any AIP solution or any alerting solution, which is just gonna forward you alerts, you still go free for that. That's also free because that goes under security alert.
Okay. 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 Thanks.
Okay, problem. Any other questions?
Hi, Samik, Guru this
Hey,
side.
hey, Guru.
Apart from cost, how we can optimize number of incidents appearing over Azure Sentinel?
So I would say that's a good question as well as a vast topic, right? So the first, if you want me to tell you in 3 points, first you need to make sure what are the data connectors you are enabling, right? And second is you have to go by all out of the box rules available, right? And then some sort of triaging you need to do, and then you have to spend around 3 to 6 months to understand the environment so that you can reduce the false positive and stuff like that. So, and finally, when you are like well aware what kind of false positive comes into environment, right, it'll be easier for you to build a custom analytic rule. And if I may show you something here, in incidents, if I go to incidents, you will get a link of SOC efficiency workbook, and this is a one-stop shop as a visual for all your incident management. So you actually can see, I don't have any incident much here, But if you look at this, right, this has all the relevant metrics which you need to look at, and that will tell you where you need to work more. Yep.
Okay, so yeah, with custom connector uh,
Yeah.
using this KQL, so that where we can optimize to
Right.
more traffic.
Yeah. Any other questions?
One related to training something part, is there any training, specific training on Azure Sentinel and Security Center managing this
Uh,
stuff? Like it's,
yes, yes. And just a quick question. Have you deployed Sentinel yet?
I'm in study mode as of now.
Okay, so okay, so there are Microsoft resources. I'd say it's like, there are sufficient. Even I had some previous sessions too. But if you are in Sentinel, right? So what Sentinel, Microsoft has done, I would just go to workbooks, and there is something called SOC Operate Process Framework. So again, this workbook is also available on GitHub. If I'm a view template and then training. So Microsoft itself told you what are the trainings available. So you can also search them, but this is one place you will get, like one place all the things. And SC200 is the study material exam where you should target to get most out of Sentinel.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts, or any other topics you want me to reiterate? Okay. So please feel free to post your questions. I will quickly move on to the next or the last section we have. So we talked about, for example, we talked about the cases where you are new to Sentinel. We talked about the cases where you are using Sentinel, but you still have some spaces or scope to optimize, right? But there are also certain other configuration, we need to consider if we are in Microsoft environment. So if I may quickly jump on to the workbook, right? So for example, there are different solutions. Let's say Microsoft Azure Security Center, as you just rightly pointed out, Guru. So Azure Security Center has its own plan and own pricing, right? So when we enable Azure Security Center, right, you get some free stuff in Sentinel. Again, the same thing goes for Defender. If you are enabling Defender, you get some free stuff in Sentinel, like some sort of discounting in terms of Sentinel data ingestion and data analysis. Right. These are the things available. So that's something I think like you can put like a cover on top of every Sentinel pricing you have. So the fundamental is the more Microsoft product you have, there are in between correlations of free tiers. So I'd again recommend all of you like to go deeply in this costing center. And again, there are two ways you can actually get to know and optimize cost. All right, so you can actually set some alerts for costing in the cost center, or even you can write some KQL, for example, whatever is available in the workbook. And let me also show you in here. It is put together some queries. Yeah, so this is going to give you billable details around the queries and solutions. So for example, this is for security inside and Azure Sentinel solution, right? So now what happens is, in that case, you get to know, like for example, you can have a logic app written and then have this query and then scheduled for every day. So any day you have a threshold that is reached, you get an alert. So that's one way of basically getting to know what's your data volume is up to. Yep. And please feel free to go through this, and then you can just reach me out on LinkedIn for any queries you have. I'd be happy to help. And obviously this session will be recorded, so you always have this. And as I mentioned, one bonus tip I'd say Even it's a bonus for overall Sentinel learning. So if I may go to Sentinel, and then Sentinel has a beautiful component called Workbook, and that's like a great visualization tool, right? So if I may start a workbook, right, and edit this, you have plenty from Microsoft, and even a lot in community galleries. But if I may add something new, right, add a query. Now let me show you what kind of queries we can do. So basically in a workbook, right, you can get data from Azure Graph. For example, if I just say, so that's another thing I'd show. So resources will give you all your Azure resources based on the access you have. So with this, what I'm trying to portray here, right, you can leverage literally other tools, for example, Workbook, and within Workbook, you can write queries, you can query APIs, and this will not cost you anything until unless you come to the workbook. Even you come to the workbook, it will just cost a query to query the resources. So you are not actually getting the data to Sentinel, but still you have all the data. So I'd encourage you to explore more of these kind of data sets, which doesn't cost and which is already available within Azure in some form in terms of data. So that's an intelligent way of reducing some more data ingestion to Azure Sentinel. So with that, I would again say if we have any questions, else I think this is all we had.
Yeah, guys, do you have any other questions? We shall wait a few more, 1 or 2 minutes for the questions. Yeah, Samik, have we planned for any other session in this series?
I have a couple of planned, so maybe we can publish them
Yeah.
shortly. Yep.
Okay.
But if you have any recommendation, any thoughts, please feel free to share. I'll be happy to pick them and talk about them.
Yeah. Okay. Guys, if you like to have any particular topic on Azure Sentinel, you can post it in the chat window, or you can unmute and bring it.